wasn't on the call sheet. That was sometimes you got to sneak things in. Sometimes you got to sneak things in.
Just got to roll with it, ad lib a
That's
little
it.
bit. Kind of like,
Well,
hey, this is a great transition because there's a lot of ad libbing in Thor: Love and Thunder, which I believe is the first film that we're going to be speaking about.
It is. So dive in, Mr. Manning.
So yeah, this is Thor: Love and Thunder. This is the fourth solo Thor film in the MCU. I believe it's the 29th film total in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as we are 14 years into this journey, which is just insane. But right off the bat, one of the first things I have to say about this movie is that anytime you have screaming goats in a movie, I'm gonna rave about it. That's just something that I have. Anytime I go into a movie, I have a checkbox. I say, are there screaming goats? No. Okay, that's a little bit of a point deduction. But there are screaming goats. Definitely got to give it a point for that.
And giant goats.
Oh, look at those! They are wonderful.
Yes, they are. They also scream quite a lot.
But yeah, I'll just set the stage with that and then let you dive into it a little bit.
This is a movie that I feel if you had like a 10-year-old and then you had like a 16-year-old and they wanted to collaborate on a superhero film, I think if you had a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old collaborating, you would have something like this, because this movie has got all sorts of craziness. You've already heard Thomas talk about the screaming goats, and they're giant screaming goats who fly. Thomas didn't mention that, so that even adds a whole other layer. But you've also got some dark elements. You've got early on, and I'm not giving anything away because this happens literally before the title. You get to see this villain, and you get a backstory of a villain, and you get to understand, because of this deep loss of a love in his life, that he is taken down this dark path. Now, we've seen that before in things like Star Wars and stuff, but I tell you what, Christian Bale as the God Butcher is amazing, and there are some very dark scenes whenever he shows up on camera. But then on the whole other side of it, you got the craziness even beyond the giant screaming flying goats. You've got all sorts of other things, including Russell Crowe starring as Zeus, and he has this crazy dance twirling baton routine using his lightning bolt. And there's so much more. And I've kind of described this movie as imagine if you have the kitchen sink and you throw the kitchen sink, everything but the kitchen sink. Well, this has the kitchen sink.
Oh, yeah.
It has the max. It has the extreme. If you think of things that are over the top, this is beyond over the top in a film. And with that, it is almost, at times, it feels ridiculous. And the question is, does it work? And with Taika Waititi, you know things are going to be kind of out there. And so I think, yes, it does work. But I do think that there will be some people, Thomas, that will walk away and say, okay, that was just a little too crazy for me. Thor Ragnarok, to me, I thought there was a really perfect balance, and it felt very organic. At times in this one, it did not quite feel as organic. It felt a little more telegraphed, almost bordering on parody. And at times it worked for me, and at times it didn't. But it was thoroughly entertaining. There was a lot going on. You get to see a love story. You get to see this montage, this almost like a rom-com love story going on between Thor and Dr. Jane Foster. No, it's not Jodie Foster or Jane Fonda, but they could have shown up in the film, and it might have worked. But it was a heck of a lot of fun. It was a ride, and it was a ride that I'm glad I held on for.
Yeah, and you mentioned the analogy of like a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old getting together to make a movie. So in this instance, I would say that the 10-year-old is Taika Waititi and the 16-year-old is Chris Hemsworth. And the way I described it a few days ago after the screening, I feel like Taika and Chris Hemsworth are cinematic soulmates. And I'm just glad they found each other so that we get movies like this. The character of Thor, I thought he was done pretty well in his first 6 years in the MCU. He was introduced in 2011 with Kenneth Branagh's film, and I thought Branagh did a great job. And, through the first two Avengers films, I thought Thor was handled well. But it wasn't until Taika joined in 2017 with Thor Ragnarok that they found exactly what this character is and what this character should be. And as you mentioned, I think this movie does a great job of reminding you just how tragic Thor's character arc in the MCU has been. He's lost everything and everyone multiple times over, but he keeps finding a way to come back. But still, in the middle of all that, he's still working to find himself. And early on in the film, there's a great conversation that kind of speaks to that main theme, that main through line throughout. There's a conversation between Thor and then Star-Lord, Chris Pratt. And Star-Lord basically says, hey, man, you've been alive for thousands of years, but you still don't seem to know exactly who you are. So go out and go find that love, because I know that's what you've closed yourself off from. And he basically tells Thor, it's better to feel the pain of loss than to feel empty, than to feel, nothing at all. And, talking about the title of the film, Thor, Love and Thunder, it's the absolute perfect title. Just the exploration of love in this movie, whether that be romantic love, like love between Jane Foster and Thor, that it was a form of romance that kind of died out but is rekindled here in a unique way, or whether that be the love amongst a family like Thor and the Guardians of the Galaxy, or the love between a father and a daughter, which is what the main driving point, the main motivation of the villain of Gore, the God Butcher, Christian Bale's villain. Just all those different forms of love that are explored thematically in here really moved me in a very very special way.
Yeah, and I think this, we talked about this in the past, and we talked about this in film studies as well. The inciting incident in any story that's driven, there's an inciting incident that starts the film, but it starts the film with the villain, and that's something you don't see a lot, that starts the story on its journey. And I would say that this movie is as much about Christian Bale's character, the God Butcher, as it is about Thor. I think there's an equal balance there. And sure, Thor gets more screen time, of course, because it's Thor's movie. But I would say the story itself is about both of those characters and the journeys that they both take. And Christian Bale is almost unrecognizable, and he was phenomenal. And this movie does have adult themes. As I mentioned, there are some really dark elements to this as well. So be aware of that. If you're going to take some small kids, just be aware. And if you're aware of some of the other stories we've seen throughout the MCU, you understand there is some darkness that shows up in this as well. But it is a movie that I've been waiting for a while. I know that you have as well. We were there in an early screening with critics, and I think I would say probably for the most part, 75% or maybe more of the crowd truly loved this. I know that there were a few that felt a little mixed on this. So tell me anything else you want to make sure you share about this, and then give me your final take with your grade as well.
Yes, just on a technical level, one of the main technologies used in this film was the volume, which is the same technology they used to make The Mandalorian and other Disney Plus Star Wars shows. So it's basically these massive rooms of panoramic LED screens, and the lighting is more realistic than what you would get from a green screen or a blue screen. And this technology is courtesy of Industrial Light and Magic, the Lucasfilm group. So I think that really went a long way toward making the environments in this film kind of feel more, authentic, and just feel more like they're engrossing you. And that, coupled with the IMAX, as you mentioned, I'm glad we were able to see this in IMAX, because the sequences that the film expands to that IMAX ratio are gorgeous, and just as far as just like putting you directly into the environment. The whole film is not filmed in that ratio, but the scenes that do expand in that really just fully kind of it's almost like it completely wraps you around and puts you in that setting with those characters and those situations and those conflicts.
We've talked about this quite a bit this summer, actually. Actually going back to even the preseason when we talked about the Multiverse of Madness with Doctor Strange. There have been quite a few films that we've said this, and if you want to watch this, watch it on the biggest screen and the biggest sound possible. We did that with, of course, Top Gun. And I recommend that as well with Thor, Love and Thunder, if you choose to watch this film. Watch it big, watch it big, watch it big. There are some amazing action sequences, some really phenomenal action sequences as well. And they take place in various locations on other planets, even in the basically in the land of the gods. You will find a battle sequence going on there as well, and then even as far away as eternity. And there's a lot going on, and it is absolutely phenomenal to watch these battle sequences. But then we talked about the humor, but you've got this deep drama as well that goes on. That's this kind of underlying current. So there's messages, there's themes, stories of forgiveness and redemption, and finding oneself. All those run strong in Thor, Love and Thunder.
And I think my final grade for this is a solid B plus. And I think fans of Thor Ragnarok and fans of Guardians of the Galaxy are going to find exactly what they're looking for in Thor: Love and Thunder.
I'm really close with you as well, Thomas. A solid B for me for Thor, Love and Thunder, and you can find that in the theaters now.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a